I love Skyline. Here's what I love, and here's why I crave Skyline almost more than like any food ever, is because I think about that the hot dog, the naked hot dog just sitting there in the bun. This is gonna get weird. I gotta stop. I think about the hot dog sitting there.
You want to start out on this note, though, that you being disappointed with the slide-in?
Did I look disappointed?
You look disappointed. But I feel like today, like, I'm going to be pretty hot. Like, usually, I think some of the feedback that our overwhelming following has been giving us is that I'm too.
Are we actually getting feedback?
And so that the feedback that we're receiving is that I'm overly subdued and that I'm more calm and I need to be more reactive. Well, the biggest thing as we sit here and we welcome our special.
Who said that? Who said that, John?
Hey, listen, I'm not here to play the blame game. I'm not here
to said it, John?
Isolate any particular listener because I don't want to out anybody. But there's improvements that need to be made to the podcast. I'm willing to do so. So you wanted to fire me up? That's fine. Tell you fired me up on Sunday was Zach Taylor and company. That was god awful. It was every conclusion that we needed to come to, every speculative analysis that we've had of the coaching staff, everything came true. Leading up to this game, Phillip Rivers was DOA, dead on arrival. Everybody had thrown him out. He was done. The $25 million was worth nothing. Get Jacoby Brissett warmed up. The cold season can only be salvaged if Phillip Rivers doesn't play. And what does the Cincinnati Bengals defense do? We make him look like a freaking all-pro. We lost. We were up 21-0. We lost 3/4 of that football game. And I do not blame the players whatsoever. I think the coaching staff is clearly overmatched. And I think, they get away with, we can give them the Chargers game, right? Because that was a bad call in the end zone. From a Bengals fan perspective, bad call in the end zone on AJ. All right, we'll give them the Eagles game because at least it wasn't a loss, right? And then the next week we won, so we'll okay. But then the fire was starting to ignite about, okay, does he know how to win football games? And then you get your butt kicked by Baltimore and trying to be cute instead of playing the game like the way you should have and respect the team that you're playing on the other side of the ball. And then this week, it was just filled over and over with poor coaching decisions, and I'll knock out. I have a bullet list that I want to get into, but just some of these simple decisions that should have been made. Like, why did we take our foot off the gas up 21-0? This team doesn't know how to win. Why are we going into zone coverage? Why is the defense not making adjustments? We got our butts kicked for 3/4 out of that game. Just because we were up 21-0 does not mean we need to get complacent. Does not mean we need to slow down. And you saw that from every standpoint, from the head coach down. Lou Anarumo didn't know what to do. You have your players now that are pissed off, and there's not smoke without fire. As much as the front office or the coaching staff or the players want to downgrade that that Zach Taylor's losing the locker room, this wouldn't be brought up if it wasn't true, if there wasn't some truth to it. And now you have people like Geno Atkins and Carlos Dunlap that have embraced the suck and have been part of this team. It's
the only thing I want to stop you say,
terrible.
It's only Carlos Dunlap. According to the pod being our man Lap and Dan Horde, it's only Carlos Dunlap.
But how much?
And Jeremy Rao might confirm that. Jeremy Rao, I don't know if he can say it, but Jeremy Rao said one of two people are actually toxic.
The other one's John Ross.
A little bit.
Yeah, and then what do you do? But also the flip time, when does Auden Tate come into play? Why are we activating John Ross for him to play one snap? Why are we not giving any opportunity to Auden Tate? Just some of the simple things that just don't make sense. And then we have Joe Mixon, who led the AFC in rushing not 2 years ago. It was 1,400 yards last year, and we have Samaje Perine running the ball on 3rd and 1.
I think another thing that will make you upset, I'm sure you saw that, and make Bengal fans upset. The Ravens traded for another great defensive lineman, and they gave up a 3rd and a 5th round. And all we need is like maybe an offensive tackle or just some type of talent on the defense. And maybe it's because they don't want to come. Maybe they're like, oh, I'm not going to go. If you trade me, I'm not going to play there. So maybe they are involved in that. It would be hard for me to imagine that they are. But to get back to the one thing that stuck out about players playing up to their potential when they play us reminds me of TJ Yates. Every time he came in, I don't know why. And it's like if a quarterback is having a slump, Kurt Russell had a different theory on this, but the NFL's theory on this is play the Bengals and you'll get out of your slump, which is insulting because it has been something that's not just been part of the Zach Taylor era, but also the ML era and
oh, that's the same thing. We shoot ourselves in the foot. I mean, the stupidness of some of the penalties that we have, or trotting Randy Bullock out there, to make a difficult kick when we probably should have went for it, in my opinion. Like, I mean, there's just those little coaching things that good coaches or coaches that are better, or more seasoned or have been in the position a lot longer seem to make, and the gambles that they take. And that's what differentiates them from us. Right now, there should be no reason this team should be at minimum 2-4, let alone should be 3-3. And we should be talking about it. We should be talked about the same way that Miami is being talked about right now, as opposed we're still in that bottom lower tier, which I truly believe that the Bengals are not. I think we are a lot better team than both New York teams, Jacksonville, Washington football team. I think we're better than them. I think we're more skating by with, those middle of the road teams like Denver, like, the Vegas teams, or maybe not quite that good. But
I like that, though. I like that.
We should be flirting with the playoffs this year, especially with the additional playoff spot being added. We should be flirting with it. I'm not saying we should be a 10-win team. A 9-win team even might be even a stretch. But towards the end of the year, we should be in the mix. And week 15 and 16 should be meaningful games, not jockeying for position come draft day.
Well, the crazy thing is Luke Knoll, who we had on yesterday, mentioned a similarity between the 2011 season. And if you look at our schedule, there's some games in there that are oddly similar to how they were structured then. The Colts game before the bye. I mean, granted, we played the Colts last week, but it's 2 or 3 weeks before the bye. We played the Titans, I think right after the bye. So there's a lot of the similar teams, but it was all geared for us to make the playoffs. Our games early were easy, and that's why I wasn't ashamed to say I thought we should go to the playoffs this year.
All right. Let's continue that for a second. We got our guest is in the waiting room, so if you want to go ahead, I'll let him in.
I love that he's in the lobby. Are you ready?
Yeah. So are you ready? I'm going to go ahead and meet him here. So
I am.
3, 2, 1.
250 strands of light, 100 invisible bulbs per strand for a grand total of 25,000 imported Italian twinkle lights. Drum roll, please.
What's up, boys?
Drum roll. Joy to the world. How you doing, man? That was.
Oh, Jeremy, sorry. That was our introduction. I'm sure unlike any other.
I'm good. I had an internet issue here at work, but I got it figured out, so now I'm ready to roll.
Fantastic. Hey, we really appreciate your time. Thanks for making time for us. I know this might be a little bit more of an unusual podcast experience for yourself, but I know you're very familiar with my cousin Sam. Obviously, you've probably seen me mixing up tweets as well. But yeah, Sam and I, just to give you a little bit of background, have been friends, or we've been cousins all our life, but best friends for 20 years, been doing this Bengals rap, if you will, for the last 15 years, where we just talk on the phone for 15, 20, 30 minutes, an hour about the Bengals and any way we can improve it. So we decided to make a podcast out of it, and to have you, yourself, and Joe, and then a couple of the other following that we have. It's just a true blessing. We really appreciate it.
The Rap Brothers, baby.
Love it. Thank you. I need a little bit of context on the name of the podcast. I mean, I get it kind of, but
this is insulting, but I want to side note, I'm drinking out of my Caribou coffee mug for you today. So honestly, Jeremy, I was talking on because we've been talking about doing a podcast, and we were just talking, and I was taking my dog to go to the bathroom to take a poop, and I was like, oh, the Mike Brown band, which might be a reflection of the organization. I don't know at this point. And I was like, instead of taking the KE off, I just put MIC. And then like that idea folded on. I'm like, well, I actually kind of know some people that we could talk to, you and Joe. And then it just like slowly became, okay, we'll just see if this works. And somehow people just started showing up, and it was just like, well, our hands are kind of tied at this point because we have people on the show. Like Luke Knoll came on yesterday. It was awesome.
Amazing.
And then, Mike Brown has been a topic of conversation for myself. I mean, again, I'm not an insider like you, but I mean, Mike Brown has been a topic of frustration for myself. And that's kind of a play on words for Sam and me, because I always complain about the front office. You know, it's been just a yearly tradition with myself. So we had to factor him in any way. We figured microphones, why not play on words? So yeah, there you go. Yeah. Real quick, I wanted to run down a couple of things before we talk into it. So obviously, Jeremy Rauch from Fox 19 joining us, and it's pretty crazy to have a chance to talk to you, someone that's covered the Olympic Games, correct, in 2008 and Beijing. The United States, obviously the basketball team that year won a gold medal, and then that was Michael Phelps's year when he won eight gold medals. So what a time to be over there, which is insane to me, and I'm sure it was crazy. But you're Ohio native, grew up in Columbus. I'm sure growing up was a big Buckeyes fan.
Yep.
I mean, that's hard not to, living in Columbus, you either are or you don't like football, right? So,
yeah.
And then also you went to school in Kentucky, correct? Asbury University?
Yeah, Asbury's in Wilmore, Kentucky. It's like a half hour from Lexington. Not a very big school, but they have a great media comm department, and I had a friend that went there and suggested it. So, that's where I landed.
So the reason why I'm familiar with that is once I graduated UC, I lived in Lexington for about 2 years. And when I noticed, as I do a little bit of my research, like Asbury University, and Kentucky, I mean, I didn't even know anybody else knew about it. That and Georgetown College, they're very, very close to one another. So that was something very cool to me that I noticed. And then I think the big thing is you've been, for me, I'm a Big Ten guy. So your coverage across the Big Ten, like that's something that I've followed now for years, coming from UC, and then to have, holy crap, I'm going to interview Jeremy Rauch on our bogus podcast, let alone the guy that I've been following for Big Ten stuff for a while. So it's really, really cool.
Well, thank you. You guys are awesome. I listen. I mean, John, I don't know you as well, obviously. Samster. I'm looking at this Zoom name here.
The name right there, yeah.
Sam has been. I don't know how long it's been that Sam has been in our.
Honestly, I can tell you the day, man. I know I shouldn't, but it's always associated with Bengals stuff. It was September 11th of last year, because that's when the Bengals played the Seahawks, and then I sent you an email, and then I was just on the Jeremy train from then on. Because the thing is, man, you were just obviously so humble, but then you responded. It wasn't like, it was like a really long, detailed mess. I'm like, you just don't find people like that who are willing to respond to the everyday Joe. And then on top of that, to actually be willing to help in all the ways that you have, not only with that, but other things that I've talked to you about, which I'm still are there in the pocket at some point, but just your willingness and your humility and your willingness just to reach out to the everyday fan, and just a testament to who you are. And I've always appreciated that.
Well, thank you. I think that's something that Joe and I try to do. I mean, you basically know, you can tell when a fan is coming at you like strong and has some kind of ridiculous take that really you can't have a quality back and forth about. You know, some fans are just frustrated, and you talked about it already, John. It's like, fire Mike Brown, fire Zach Taylor, fire everyone, and those you kind of take, like, I get it, you're frustrated. And then there are other ones who are kind of asking you thought-provoking questions, or doing stuff like Sam has done, where you say things that are like a reference to something we said or a movie that we like or whatever the heck it might be, man. And it's just like, this Sam guy that keeps showing up, we got to figure out who this guy is. And so obviously, if you guys are friends and you're cousins, you go way back, and we want to be a part of that somehow. So I'm glad that Joe and I can do that.
Dude, we're trying to get in the ring with you guys. We're trying to get in the ring with you guys. We're just those two guys, and like when the wrestlers, and they come out, we're just the guys in the suits following you to the ring. That's all we are. We're just the what do they call it? The mouthpiece. That's all we are.
Oh yeah, we're here, and Sam has done a very good job. And the difference between you and him, or me and him, if you can tell, is I'm a little bit more subdued, and I do like kind of think out stuff. Sam just spouts off, and that's why we balance each other out so well. Whether that be Bengals or just in life, Sam wants to go hit it right as right as soon as we go, and doesn't really think about possible reactions or consequences or whatever. It's been like that our entire life. And now, but with our Bengals frustration, or our Bengals, whenever they're doing very well or doing, very poorly, Sam's always there to be the one that's a little bit over dramatic and very reactionary, and I'm there to pull him in. But then there are certain times I need to look at him and be like, give me some sort of hope. And something, something
Right.
I can lean on. And we had Joe, you referenced this, we had Joe on last week. And I asked him a question, what was basically a pulse check-in of the fan base in Cincinnati. And you guys obviously can't, you can't really show fanhood one way or another, or show bias one way or another, because you're a professional and you have a job to do. But us as fans, we can be incredibly biased. And I think one of the things that I want, and I think that is earned, is Coach Taylor does have this season. He should be able to coach out the season and see how it goes, and then give him that opportunity with Joe Burrow. But ever since, our Baltimore game, there's been rumblings about his seat getting a little bit warmer, especially within Cincinnati, let alone nationally. So I'm just now that we have another week and we had another meltdown and a colossal loss on Sunday that could have been incredibly avoidable. Where does Zach Taylor stand right now, in Cincinnati, and some of the other things with the locker room kind of rumbling too? Like, just give us some sort of insight, if you could, what you know and you can share.
Yeah, I would say this, and you can go back and someone could watch this next year at the same time and say, wow, that Jeremy guy was way off. And I've been wrong before, but I would tell you the sense that I get is that they are going to not only let Zach Taylor play out the string this year, regardless of what happens. Obviously, it needs to get better. But that Zach Taylor is going to be given one more chance to probably draft one more round of his guys to build his culture and to have a year 3 shot at this. I know there's been a lot of comps to, Shula and things like that. He had a longer string than people remember as well. People kind of remember that as like, oh, he had a couple of years. It was just like Zach Taylor, and then he got booted. It wasn't like that exactly. So I think in conversations that I've had recently in the last 24 hours even, that I think that Zach Taylor is going to get a chance to go ahead and have his 3rd year shot at this, no matter how this year plays out. But there's going to be a lot of context with what happens at the end of this year, the rest of this year, and how many games they win on how they view next year, which I'm sure you guys know as fans. Here's the thing. You don't want your message to be falling on deaf ears just 22 games into your tenure as a head coach. And right now, as you talked about, that's kind of where they are with the fans right now. And it didn't get better on Sunday, because Sunday was one of those games people were like, what are we watching? It's 21-0. Yeah. Who is this team? I think at one point –
you tweeted about the offensive line. You're stacked. And you're like –
respect on their name. Listen, when on the 7-yard touchdown run from Joe Mixon, when he ran that in and I saw the push the O-line was getting, my jaw was on the floor. I could not believe what the O-line was doing with that defense as a whole, what the Bengals were able to do against the Colts. And then you see it all unravel. And that's the issue with this team and this coaching staff and the questions that keep coming up. It's not just about, man, that's good. Your culture feels like it's in a good place. Like, great. But fans don't come to games to watch culture. You don't come to, I mean, obviously only 12,000 fans can come to Sunday's game against the Browns, and it's limited. But
like a packed house right now for Bengals fans.
Exactly. 12,000 is going to be about 8,000 Browns fans probably. But you don't come to a game and say, like, wow, do you notice the culture with the guys? Like, look at the culture. They're down 21-0, but look at the culture. No, you come to watch a team win a game. And so that is the disconnect that is continuing to stay disconnected, with Zach Taylor saying, listen, this will turn. The culture is good. The disconnect is fans don't want to hear that anymore. They want to see some winning. And then you can tell us the culture is good. And so that's the dangerous part of all of this. But all that being said, I do think Zach gets a 3rd year shot at this.
But do you think expectations change? I think at the beginning of the season, we all were kind of ready for a mediocre to subpar season. But then when you produce the way that you produce, or you have, obviously the Chargers game, Bengals fans say that wasn't a push off. Chargers fans say it was.
It was.
Either way,
it was.
Yeah, either way, they could have gone either way. In my opinion, it wasn't. But either way, you can go. We'll give that one to the coaching staff. The Browns game, whatever, we weren't ready for it. But then, you tie the Eagles when you probably should have won. You should have gotten 6 instead of 3 in that final drive. The Ravens game, we made a couple of – I think we got cute. We should have played a little bit more conservative.
And we should have taken the kick. We should have just kicked off. I don't know why we took the ball. That was another – we talked about that too. Sorry.
Yeah, John, and then this most recent week, so does that expectation change, I guess, for a coach, where we went from, okay, as fans, we're going to be okay with a 4 to 6 win territory, but now we're starting to lose games that we're in control of. Do expectations change, and does that leash get a little bit tighter towards the end of the season, or do you think that just because of Mike Brown and the history of the Bengals organization, we're going to give him that third year?
I think that is where it might get dicey. I think what I'm saying right now, based on he's going to get the third-year shot, is if they go ahead and beat the Washington football team, the Giants, if they win some of these games, if maybe – there's a crazy stat that I think Paul Dehner Jr. and Jay Morrison, who we love and work with a lot, put out from The Athletic, that I believe that when teams – this is a crazy stat – when teams blow a 21-0 lead, the next week they've won 11 straight, teams that have done that. It's a wild stat.
Say that. Go ahead. Say that one more time.
One more time. When teams blow a 21-0 lead in a game, the following game, those teams that blew that lead and lost have won 11 straight. Have won that next game 11 times in a row. If that makes any sense. So the Bengals are statistically,
for 11.
But if they beat a team like the Browns, but to your point, John, I mean, if this team was 3-3, they kind of coulda, shoulda, woulda been right now, we would all be tracking with, okay, this is where we thought they'd be. I thought 7-9 or 6-10 was the number this year, and so that made sense, right? You're progressing, you're seeing some good things. Think like Kyler Murray in his first year. I think he was 5-10-1, and then you see where Kyler Murray is and what the Cardinals are doing now, and it's that's the picture of what this is supposed to look like. So I think it's a good point. What I'm saying right now about Zach Taylor getting a third-year shot may get a little dicey if this team, I don't know, man, has 1 or 2 wins in week 13, 14. That's different conversations might start happening at that point. And it might not be just about Zach Taylor. It might be pressure on Zach of, hey, listen, some of your buddies that you hired to help out, they got to go. Because if they don't go, and if you don't throw them under the bus, like we've seen in the NFL so many times, if you don't throw them under the bus, your name is coming up next. And so that's, I think, a conversation that could happen if things fall that way. If they win 4 or 5 games still, it's they can reasonably, I think he's okay.
So one of the things I talked about yesterday with Luke, just because we don't like touching upon the Marvin Lewis era so much, it's gone. But one thing you have to credit the guy is he had a great coaching tree. He had a fantastic coaching tree of defensive coordinators, of offensive coordinators, of defensive backs who end up being, or defensive back coaches who end up being head coaches, whether their tenure was long or not. He only did that one time where he fired someone midseason 2018 and then took over play calling. Is that what it would? Is that something that could happen this year, or is it something that we're seriously going to have to watch the rest of the season and just have to keep saying, I love where the defense is at, and the defense is in the right place? And it's clearly not. If Phillip Rivers seems to know exactly what you're doing for 38 points of that game, or however many yards, 360 yards that he scored, if you see Zach being aggressive enough to make that decision, or is like you said, this is going to have to force his hand if he really wants to keep his job and not pick in the top 5 like he said he would not be doing this year and promised fans?
I think honestly with Lou Anarumo, and this is it's too easy to throw these names out, but it's important to mention their names. With Jim Turner and Lou Anarumo, who he has connections with. Jim Turner, he feels really close with for what's happened with him and how he's worked with him in his career. I think those 2 guys specifically, and you can look around at different guys, but those 2 guys, it's going to take someone saying, Zach, got to move on. I don't think that it's going to be one of those things where Zach makes the hard cut decision of, hey, Lou, this is a tough conversation. Maybe it's Jim Turner as well. You got to go. I don't see that playing out in the middle of the season because I think Zach is, as he's told you guys, the fans, as he's told us, the media and everyone, is so married to keeping this culture, this thing that he's building, and having everyone along for the ride with it and not kind of just blowing it up. Zach said this week, I don't want a quick fix. And people keep asking, what does a quick fix mean? What is he talking about? You know, he's trying to build this culture. What does he mean when he says he doesn't want to kind of tear it down and have a quick fix? I think at times he's talking about things like that. When Marvin did that, when he took over as defensive coordinator, the first couple of games, I mean, you guys probably recall, it's like, wow, this is kind of working a little bit. Like what Marvin's doing is working. And I think people thought that it might work, and it didn't in the end. With what happened with Ken Zampese.
Oh, gosh. Z. Oh, boy.
You know, that didn't work really that well either, and it's because this team's been losing consistently since 2016. So I think Zach means that when he says, I don't want to have a quick fix. Lou, you're out. Jim Turner, you're out. And bring someone else in. I think he wants to try to continue to play this out. That may be to his faults. That may not be a good
because then if they keep playing, like if they have a couple games, well, then he's just going to keep them in the next year. And then, like, are you really changing the culture going forward if you're going to end up like granted, like Paul Gunther had a couple of those games. Like we were touch up on the TJ Yates game against Houston 2015. Like guys that shouldn't win end up winning. But overall, they were pretty good at closing football games. Their defenses are pretty stout, but Anarumo does not give me that type of comfort that our defense can win a football game.
No. And some of his, I just thought it was incredibly weird and odd. And again, I'm just a fan, but to play back and go into like a zone coverage without blitzing or putting any sort of pressure on Phil Rivers, which has been, I mean, the tape has been the sauce all year. How do you get these older quarterbacks, how do you get them to make mistakes and seem flustered? You put pressure on them. Just because we're up 21-0 doesn't mean you don't. You have a young defense that doesn't know how to play with the lead and doesn't know how to play conservatively. And you're giving a quarterback, a very experienced quarterback that is, to sit there and sit in the pocket and look for holes in a zone. I thought that was I thought that was really, I don't know how I want to put this, not sad, but just the wrong call altogether. And it definitely showed and led to them coming back. We made Phillip Rivers' old noodle arm that he was being called, the week before, look like an all-pro. And we lost 3 quarters of that game, and we only won one of them, and that was the opening quarter. Let me give you a hypothetical, and that's kind of my part of the job here on this podcast. But let's say Minnesota does go down and they do end up getting rid of Mike Zimmer. And at the end of the year, we do have to have that tough conversation. Well, Coach Taylor, you're going to stay, but the defensive coordinator position's open. Is Mike Zimmer too big now of a name to even start to even consider as potentially reuniting with us? Or do you think he's going to be a head coaching candidate and he's kind of put the Bengals chapter behind him?
I would say this, and there's the reason why I was smiling when you're asking that question. If Mike Zimmer is available, you drive the biggest stretch limo you can find up to Minneapolis, and you wine him and you dine him. You take him to Cheesecake Factory a couple of times.
Yeah.
Oh, weird. Big spender, Joe.
You let him get an extra piece of cheesecake if he wants.
Yeah.
But seriously, if Mike Zimmer was willing to come, I mean, oh my goodness, are you kidding me? Yeah, absolutely. That would be, hey, Lou, it's been great. Don't let the door hit you or the good Lord split you. I mean, you would certainly want Mike Zimmer. But what I would have to say, John, is that I would have to see what openings there were at the end of the year. And I've got to think there's always at least, it seems, 4 or 5. How is Adam Gase not fired yet?
Right.
Okay, is there truth to Eric Bieniemy coming? He interviewed with us, right? Did we not want him, or did he not want to come with us? Because then that's going to be the next topic, because he's going to go somewhere, and we're going to be like, oh, we could have had Eric Bieniemy if something bad happened.
The only version that I know, Sam, that I can tell you, and there's probably another version out there somewhere, is that the Bengals fell so in love with Zach Taylor in his interview that he won the interview, that he won the job. I can't tell you whether or not Eric Bieniemy said no. I think Eric Bieniemy wants to be a head coach. He deserves to be a head coach. People will say, well, Andy Reid's the guy that calls plays. Eric Bieniemy is in his left pocket, man. He is learning every single day from one of the greatest, most innovative, creative play callers in the game. Eric Bieniemy, I think, would make a very interesting hire as a head coach. I don't know if he's fit to be a head coach in the NFL, but he certainly can call some plays. So I don't know. The only thing I can tell you is that I knew they were so overwhelmed with how Zach presented himself, what he was like, all that they wanted him. But I think to fully answer your question, sometimes it takes me a while to get there.
It's all right.
Same with us. Don't worry about it.
If they could get Mike Zimmer back here as DC, I mean, yeah, again, like I said, take a limo up there and offer him everything you got. But I just don't know if Mike Zimmer, who I think likes being in that position where he's running a team, I don't know if he wants to come back and work under a guy like Zach Taylor who's in his mid-30s. That's my take.
Yeah, and I look at like a job like Houston that's going to be open at the end of the year, and I don't really expect Romeo Crennel to take on that full position. That's at his age. He's in his mid-70s. I think that would be like an ideal landing spot for Zimmer. The quarterback is already established. You just have to make a couple of tweaks, somewhere. But I think like that would if it was positioned between DC for the Bengals, or hey, you have another crack at being a head coach somewhere with an established quarterback, instead of taking it because he was kind of forced to gamble with Kirk Cousins, in my opinion. I think, and that was, I think, with Deshaun, it would be a quick turnaround. Houston would be a quick fix, not like if you went to the Jets or Giants where it's a complete overhaul turnaround.
Yeah, you go to Houston, you've got a defense that's not terrible still. You've got some pieces that you can play with. It's been unfortunate. Mike Zimmer, I think, is a good head coach. I really do. What's happened with the Vikings and some injuries were unfortunate this year. Kirk Cousins is not playing well. It's fallen apart really quick. And I think that probably caught some people off guard. And now you can tell with some things that are happening, even with the Ravens today and some moves they made and trading with
God, I know. You
can see they're starting to understand this season is gone. That's a tough thing to watch play out, especially for them in Minnesota. So I think that's a good, John. Houston could be a good spot for him.
When I woke up this morning, I saw that trade from the Ravens. I'm just like, okay, so the first thing we opened up with, I'm like, okay, they don't care about their draft picks. They're just getting great guys. I don't know where they get all this money or whatever. My question is, by the trade deadline, you watch the prices, right? Is it a higher or lower number? Do you think it is higher or lower that we trade more or less than 2 players before the trade deadline?
Wow. I'm going to say lower because I know the Bengals.
And not even a number, or it could be 1?
Yeah, I think 1.
Okay.
And I don't know necessarily how that's going to look. I don't know what they can get for Carlos Dunlap. Carlos Dunlap's play has.
But that's $11 million off your books that you can bring people in. That is, Yeah.
But I don't know what they can get for him. I think they can get something in the right spot, the right place, the right team. I think I don't know if someone threw this out on Twitter, whoever it was, you have teams that are like an embarrassment of riches. Think about the Chiefs, right? The Chiefs, didn't they just grab Le'Veon Bell?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they did.
For a minute, I was like, that can't be reality. It is reality. So the Chiefs is a team like that where you have an embarrassment of riches where let's grab Le'Veon Bell. Well, whatever. We just won a Super Bowl. We're plenty good. Let him play here for a little bit and see if it works. John Ross, does he have a team like that where they're like, man, this guy's got speed and he needs a change of scenery? And I don't know what he gives the Bengals in return. It feels like he maybe gives them a 6th-round pick.
Yeah. You and John are both – when I read your tweet about God love him, I was just thought of my cousin because you and him both have that same dynamic with John Ross.
And it's so sad because I was his biggest advocate. That's what I don't know about you, Jeremy, but when he was coming out of college and we drafted him at number 9, I'm like, this is our missing piece. This is going to open up the offense. I loved John Ross. I was so high on him. I thought it was great. And then just ever since then, it has just been – just seems like he just can't get it done. He can't stay on the field. And if he went to another team, I wish him nothing. I don't want him to struggle. I want him to have a better second half career. But I don't – he's not value added to the Bengals. Clearly, from both perspectives, from his side and ours. Just get rid of him. And we draft well late in the draft anyway. An extra 5th, 6th-round pick, and especially if we sell high on him to a team like the Chiefs or somebody looking for it, for an extra 5th-round pick, I'll take it. We can grab a flyer on somebody. I mean, we've known as long as it's not in the 1st round, the Bengals seem to draft okay.
they've had quite a run. Now, this year, the first 3 picks, I got losing track, were pretty darn good.
Yeah.
Listen, and this is, I'm not going to defend
that first pick. I don't know. That first pick, I didn't really like that guy.
I'm not going to defend Zach Taylor too much on this because I don't think it's really a thing to do. It's not very cool to do right now. But Zach Taylor's first had plenty of time to prep for draft with Duke Tobin, obviously, who's a huge part of the draft process. And he had high picks, which also helps. But you get Joe Burrow, as you laughed about, Sam, as a good number 1 overall pick. You get T. Higgins, you get Logan Wilson, you get some of these guys in here. And then all these guys are playing, man. Right, wrong, or indifferent, you're seeing these guys all over the field. And so, obviously, extra picks, even if later, like you talked about, John, next year could certainly help out for this team. I mean, what does it benefit John Ross to be active and stand on the sideline and look like he did on Sunday? I mean, Tyler Boyd said yesterday with us, listen, in that year 2, remember Tyler Boyd in year 2, it was like Tyler Boyd might he might phase down in the NFL. There was a concern of, is his head right? What's he doing off the field? And for John Ross, he said, listen, if you're on the sideline, John, be in tune to the game. Look alive. Look ready. Look engaged. This was advice that Tyler Boyd gave to John Ross on our Zoom call with all of us out in the open air. And so obviously he's seeing what John Ross is going through and saying, man, you got to look ready. You got to look like interested and engaged. Because this
like you said before, it's like sometimes John Ross reveals a lot in press conferences. You said he reveals sometimes more than he needs to. I mean, just to throw that in there, I think you've noticed that as well.
He does. He has always opened up about insecurities. Listen, if I am meeting with my therapist, it is the right time to talk about insecurities. And I understand that we're in a day and age now where people are like, hey, share your feelings, share what you're struggling with, be open about it. That's a good thing and a healthy way to view life. But I also think as an NFL player who has struggled with insecurities for a long time, you've got to be careful with that because John Ross has done it so many times where it's like, man, I was in my head last year, but now I'm good. But then he's not good. And then the next year it's like, I was in my head last year. You got to at some point just say like, John, button it up. Let's go. I'm ready to roll. I'm not going back to that place that I was again. and that's an example for like life in general. Sure, you have issues and you got to share them with someone, but at some point you got to stop saying like, yeah, I'm in my head again, because that will become who you are and how people see you. And you can change that narrative. And John Ross has not. That's a big issue.
Yeah, I like I said, I'm ready just to cash the check, send him on his way. And like I said, if he has a great second half to his career, fantastic. I want nothing but the best for the player. But right now, we need to focus on keeping people here that are going to aid into that culture that Zach Taylor is trying to build. And John Ross doesn't seem like the player that's going to do it. So I just want to throw, I think John Ross is probably the most notable name, in my opinion, that would be, on the trade discussion. But what other name do you potentially see kind of trade? Is Carlos Dunlap the second most obvious, or is there something else? Is there another name that we're missing as fans that could be coming up here before the deadline?
Yeah, Carlos Dunlap would be I hear that, AJ Green. Carlos Dunlap.
Don't say it.
That would be the next most obvious. I don't think that AJ Green is going to be that guy. Now, a year ago, it was like, y'all should have gone for that. Y'all should have traded Andy Dalton. Any of those options would have been on the table. But I think what they saw with AJ Green against the Colts and what Zach Taylor believes about him. Zach Taylor has a way of talking about certain players. If you have listened to a lot of his press conferences like I have so far, Joe and I have noticed this, and I pointed this out to Joe about a week ago. But the veteran player that he really likes, wants to keep around, believes in, thinks can help the team like AJ Green, he will take questions for 21 months straight on the job and say, but we believe in him and think he's going to help this team and be a big part of our future. He's always said that about AJ Green. Listen to what Zach Taylor says right now about Carlos Dunlap when he's asked about Carlos Dunlap. He will steer the conversation somewhere else and say, overall in the locker room, we have guys that are blah, 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 blah. It is not specifically a response of, you know what? I believe in Carlos Dunlap, and I think that he needs to be a part of our future. That
I watched that guy on your guys' live. I remember you're bringing that up. That's a great point.
And I think it's telling. It's Zach Taylor not saying something but you have to understand that he does often say something about the guys that he believes in and wants to stick around. I believe that A.J. Green is in that category of guys he wants to stick around. I think Carlos Dunlap is a guy that they are trying to get out of here yesterday.
Wow.
Zach Taylor right now, I think he sees and understands that the talent has dropped off and the frustration is rising, as all of you have seen with Carlos Dunlap. But now what's happening with Carlos Dunlap is, and this is part of what I was able to report yesterday, is that you have a locker room who is trying to keep this culture and this glue together and stick through this. And you have a guy in Carlos Dunlap who is trying to set the world on fire. And Carlos Dunlap is a guy who I've loved for a long time. He's been great to cover, man. I can't say enough about Carlos Dunlap. I have loved covering him. What he's done in the community, he's been a true joy. I think he's in a really tough spot mentally right now. He is not seeing his decline on the field, and he's not understanding what the coaches have asked him to do. And right now, they are at a big crossroads. And that is Carlos Dunlap saying things about the team, the coach, his role, that is contradictory to the direction they're trying to go. As you guys know, that's not going to play. Now, as for Geno Atkins, I can speak a little more into that now, having some conversations than I could a week ago. A week ago, and I maybe even said it with Joe at some point on Sunday on the podcast we did, I thought that possibly Geno Atkins was upset with the coaching staff. I thought that possibly there were issues there, getting only 18 snaps because he looks healthy. Why is he only playing on third downs? And I thought Zach was kind of telling us something with him. I can almost guarantee you I was wrong at this point with the conversations that I had yesterday.
That's good. It's good because we were
good news.
But let me just tell you this about Geno Atkins. I don't know if he's a tradable option right now. He's the highest paid player on the team. I don't think that's going to work, and I don't know how it's going to play out with him. But I will tell you this: Geno Atkins is not upset about his playing time. Matter of fact, Geno Atkins, and this is going to be tough for the fans to hear, is in some ways understanding that he is not the same Geno Atkins that he once was. Whether it be injuries, whether it be age, he is completely okay with playing as a third down specialist because he thinks he is the most effective being used on third downs. So that is completely different than what a lot of people think about Geno Atkins. He's ticked off. He's mad. Mm-hmm. He's one of the guys that is trying to put this team on blast. Not at all. In fact, Geno Atkins, when his name was thrown into the mix, I was told, with all those other guys that were upset, said, "Coach, it's not me."
I didn't even know he had teeth. Have you ever seen Parenthood when Keanu Reeves says that about me? I'm so glad you got that. Anyways, keep going. Sorry. I didn't even know he had teeth.
I digress on that, but I feel like I needed to put that in there because I know people are curious about Geno Atkins and where his headspace is. Man, Geno Atkins is the guy that is just not the same Geno he once was, and they view him as a third down specialist, and he's not pissed off about that right now.
I wanted to just get the temperature really because I have another question about that first overall pick, which I'm still up in the air about. No, AJ Green is somebody that we and Joe clipped it. I'm not going to try to create a word. It's too early right now over here. Really well. So about AJ Green, it's somebody that we love. It's somebody that Cincinnati loves and adores. And after a game like last year, does the pulse of AJ Green staying for the future change, or do you still need to see the season play out for him and both Cincinnati, or where do you see AJ Green going after this year?
Season's got to play out. I mean, he's only had one AJ Green-like game this year, right? I mean, week one, I think Joe Burrow was still trying to kind of get his bearings about him. And it was probably his roughest week outside of the Ravens game when things just didn't work. But other than that, Joe Burrow's been great. He's been fantastic. And last week was the first time that we saw AJ Green look like he can. That, to me, was really promising because it was AJ Green doing AJ Green things, like finding ways to get open, make contested catches with the game on the line. It's like, oh, AJ Green, how you doing? Good to see you. So, I mean, if they see more of that with him, he can earn himself a contract and stay here for maybe another year or two. But right now, to answer your question in short, I think it has to play out a little more. I don't think just what he's put on tape so far this year is enough. But it's a reminder. It's like going, it's like golf for me, right? Like I might shoot terrible 9 times out of 10, but you go one time, you chip in for eagle. It's like, oh, like I'm going to come back to this. It's like anything for anyone. It's That's what AJ Green is right now. Like what happened last week was a bit of an anomaly for who he's been this year, right? It's like Bengals shipped in for Eagle last week with AJ Green, and now they're kind of like, let's come back one time and see if it's still there. You see if the magic is still there. And if that continues to be a consistent thing, I think he can earn himself a contract. And by the way, he should. He's done enough here.
Yes.
He's done enough here to earn himself the benefit of the doubt with this organization. He just has to play a little bit like last week more often and not like the previous few weeks.
And after learning about Whitworth, like, don't let a guy like that walk, especially if he has something left in the tank. Sorry, John.
And you're fine. And you have young receivers. Tyler Boyd's still in his
so good,
learning to become that number one guy where AJ has been, right? And then you have T. Higgins, who is basically
125.
Yeah, who is AJ Green 2.0. Like honestly, looking at him from where AJ was as a rookie, T. Higgins just looks just like him. Maybe not as dynamic, but could definitely get there. I guess my question would be to follow up with that is like, I'm a big AJ Green homer. I don't care how many games he sits out. He should always be in orange and black. It's just me being a fan and being biased, right? But that being said, let's say he does kind of pick up from last week and he has a positive season, ends between 800 and 1,000 yards, 4 or 5 touchdowns, maybe gets to 6 or 7 and leads us to wins. Does that warrant a 2-year, $20 million deal, 2-year, $24 million deal? Or do you think there's like a number that you kind of like draw the line at with someone like AJ, who's dynamic, sure, but like you just prefaced, is it going to be the risk worth it?
Is he going to get the text that says we're not going to overpay for an aging wide receiver and have him say that?
Yeah, I think, and I brought this up with Joe recently, it may have been on one of our platforms we were doing something, is AJ Green, does he viewed a little bit like Deshaun Jackson now? How is AJ Green viewed across the league? I mean, Cincinnati, for us, covering the team, for you guys as fans of the team, it's like AJ Green is forever the GOAT, man, and he's always going to be one of the best. I don't know that he's still viewed the same way around the league as he's viewed in Cincinnati, and so I would wonder, I think he's in a different place than Witt was, where when Witt left, when Witt decided that the Bengals aren't going to pay me kind of what I'm asking, I'm going to go get it somewhere else, because the Bengals were like, hey, Witt, we kind of see you as like maybe kind of heading towards the end of your career. Here's what we'll offer, but, like, let's chill here. You're not a Mercedes. You're maybe a tick above a Ford Taurus or like a Honda Accord still. Nothing against Honda Accords. I have a Honda Accord.
It'll run until it dies. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's what he's doing right now, but he's doing it at a very high level. He's still running.
If anything, Honda Accord's a compliment. I digress. So Witt had that like down year, and it felt like things were going in the wrong direction. They're like, let's hit big on a couple of draft picks and it'll be just fine. And I think they're in a different spot with AJ Green, where AJ Green is a guy that hasn't really played much in a couple of years. And so I don't know how you view his career now and how much he has left in the tank. I mean, he's along the same line, career path, obviously, as Julio Jones. Look at that draft. But is he Deshaun Jackson? Deshaun Jackson is the guy that's like, whoa, did you have Deshaun Jackson in fantasy week 1? He had 200 yards receiving and 3 touchdowns. But his hamstring kind of like flared up at the end of the game. And now he's out the next like 10 of the 16 games.
Right.
So that's what happens to Deshaun Jackson. And is that how the rest of the league views AJ Green? I think that's an important question. But to put numbers on it is tough. 2 years, $24 million. If AJ Green finishes with the numbers you said he might, 800 to 1,000 yards, absolutely. I think they would go for that, because I think they can still go ahead and they've got T. Higgins, they've got Tyler Boyd. They still believe in Auden Tate. They're going to have to make a decision on him, obviously. But I think there's a lot of good that he brings to this team. And then you keep AJ Green for a couple of more years. Help groom some guys. Help be that guy. He's not going to be the number one anymore, but help be that guy that still makes plays. And then you go get a guy after you draft some offensive linemen, whatever else you might think you need early on next year. You get a receiver in the 4th or 5th round. That comes into the fold. And you do it that way. I mean, because they're not going to go get some guy in free agency. You guys know that. With the
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's their perfect world, man, is seeing AJ Green for a couple of more years where he can go get you 600 to 800 yards even if it's that. And I think that's something they hope happens.
My last question before, because this is just the last one I have, and I just want to get the fan base cleared. Joe Burrow is happy being a Bengal. do you see him being I know it's hard to tell. Fans are already like, every time he has a bad game, they're like, oh, he's going to leave us and all this other. So there's that fear. As a fan, take the DeLorean 5 years down the road, 15 years down the road into whatever. Do you see Joe Burrow still being a part of this franchise and also taking the organization to a respectable level, both financially, marketability, and also bringing in talent and just raising the market for Cincinnati?
The only thing I can tell you is this. There is so much to like about Joe Burrow. Regardless of, I think it's easy right now to say he's getting murdered. Which, by the way, he didn't get sacked a ton on Sunday, but he's getting pressured a lot. He's getting hit a lot. He's taking all these sacks and he's taking all these L's, which he's just not used to, right? Can he mentally handle it? Just zooming, I can't say being around Joe Burrow because I haven't been, but just zooming with Joe Burrow and talking to his parents quite a bit in the offseason and getting to know him and his makeup. This is not a guy that is going to just bounce because it's not going well. As you guys already know, he's getting hit a lot or he loses a lot in year one. I believe that Joe Burrow is a guy that's like, I'm going to freaking fix this thing and it's on me to do it. And I think that's how Joe Burrow views things. He doesn't even like people to have an edge on him when he loses. We'll ask him questions about, hey, what happened here? Was it tough? And like last week, Joe Burrow said, I played good, maybe even said great, for 3 quarters and 14 minutes. I had one bad play. Like that's how Joe Burrow saw it. And so that confidence, that swagger that he had at LSU that won him a national title in the Heisman is still there. I'm not looking at a guy now, I would be concerned if I'm looking at a guy right now and I'm like, this guy looks like he's mentally being worn down already. I don't see that in him. And the cherry on top of what I'm saying is Joe Burrow is out there putting 300-yard games out there 4 times in his first 6 games. And he's looking the part, he's looking comfortable, and the deep ball, his accuracy, all those things, the decisions he's making, the charts, the stats, those things are growing. I mean, Sam's dog loves it.
Yeah, you heard it. Sweetie.
So, I can't project 5 to 10 to 15 years down the road, but I can tell you that I have seen top pick quarterbacks look shaken and look different than the guy that they were in college in year 1 even. Like, that's not the guy we saw in college who was just like Mr. Swagger, Mr. like, right, bring it on. Joe Burrow won't let anyone get an edge on him. He won't take it. And I think with his talent and with his mindset, it leads me to believe that Joe Burrow can still be a guy that elevates a franchise, even though it's early on in his career.
And it's, go ahead and clip that one.
Yeah, and it's the way that the layout is of the AFC too now, and compared to the NFC, right? The AFC is going to be an absolute gauntlet for the next 4 or 5 years. And when you have Lamar and Patrick Mahomes, similar age to Joe Burrow, Deshaun Watson, you're going to have to deal with these folks year in and year out. And not to mention, Pittsburgh, they'll find the rightful heir to Ben Roethlisberger. We know what they will. We're fans. We know that. So, I mean, it's not like it's going to get any easier. But that being said, if we continue to maybe start start winning games that we should be winning, that's only going to increase his confidence and that swagger, and we'll start to see it come out. And I think that's what's going to lead or drive that hunger for Joe Burrow as we go for years on and year out. Baltimore, KC, and Pittsburgh are the staples of the AFC. They're going to be like that for 15 years. Oh, no, Tennessee. By the way, here comes Joe Burrow in Cincinnati. And that happened with Indianapolis. I hate to pull this up as much as I do because I'm a Peyton Manning homer as well. But Indianapolis was an afterthought in 1997. They were nothing. They had Marshall Faulk. They were very small potatoes in the AFC. And then for the next 15 years, they were the most relevant, franchise in the AFC other than New England, right? So, they had Peyton. And then Peyton Manning's rookie year, 3-13, almost 30 interceptions was, just abysmal. But the following year went to the playoffs, and then they were consistent. And I foresee that's how Joe Burrow is. They at least have the opportunity to do to mimic some sort of production.
And I also think that it's hard for fans in Cincinnati. It's difficult. and I understand it, to think about the division. You mentioned the class of the AFC. I mean, goodness gracious, what Patrick Mahomes is doing is unfair.
And then Tennessee, who we play in 2 weeks.
Tennessee. Now, Ryan Tannehill is doing fine.
He's fine.
He's fine. He's fine. It's good, but it's not like he's not one of those quarterbacks you're like, wow,
I love that he's doing fine.
They have Derrick Henry and they have a good defense, and Mike Vrabel's doing great as a head coach. Derrick Henry is a beast. But what I'm trying to say is it's hard to see things with Joe Burrow and Cincinnati and not think like, oh gosh, we have Pittsburgh and Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, and how the heck does this ever flip in our direction? Because Lamar Jackson's not going anywhere. You know, it's like this spiral thought. The Steelers are going to draft some world-beating quarterback, you know, who acts like
and Roethlisberger Jr.
Exactly, like he's going to come on the field and like looks like he just got murdered, then bounce back up the next play and lead him to victory, which is Big Ben's career. Mm-hmm. And so you have to think about it like this: there are so many mediocre teams in the NFL. Honestly, there really are. And that is how Andy Dalton and A.J. Green got to the playoffs in 2011. With that record, you beat the mediocre teams. And listen, you need to win a game or two in your division. You can't just go over against all of them. But they can win a game or two in their division if things are turning in the right direction. But view it as like, even if next year is like beating up on some of those teams that are mediocre and starting to turn that tide. How do you start to turn that tide where it's like, we're winning a couple division games now. You know, this is good. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the mindset you got to have. It's not like, shoot, if we can't beat those guys, we have no chance. Well, thankfully, you're not playing those guys every single week, and there are teams you can't beat in the NFL.
No. All right, so we'll we'll go ahead and wrap this up. I know your time's valuable. Thank you again. I have just a couple.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you.
2 quick fire questions. I just want one-word answers. First one, probably less important than the second one, but if you had to go win total for the Bengals right now, knowing the back end of the schedule, you have Washington football team, you have Dallas, you have the Giants, you still have Houston, and then the Ravens at the end of the year, you don't even know if they're going to be playing for anything. So what do you think a realistic win total for us this year is?
4.
Jeremiah.
If I was a betting man right now, yeah, I don't know what the line before the season was 5.5.
Yep.
I'm guessing, you know, if you were going to reevaluate now, it's dropped to 4.5, maybe 3.5. I'm not sure. But I would say 4. You know, because I think the Cowboys, I can't believe I'm saying this, are going to be a beatable team.
Yep.
If you want a mess if you want a mess of a football team right now, look no further than the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, there are people saying like Jerry Jones should just like hold up his resignation sign and just say I'm out. Like it is dark.
That division is so nice. Like I would love to be in that division right now, to be honest.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, may we all be blessed one day to be in the division like the Cowboys and the Eagles. And
yeah.
But I mean, listen. I think that 4 is reasonable because I can see them beating Washington. I can see them beating Dallas, the Giants maybe. And if they won all 3 of those games, that gets them to 4 wins. That's where I am right now. And I don't even know if they're going to win all 3 of those games, so I think there's a one-off somewhere. They beat the Browns on Sunday and then lose one of those they should.
They're going to beat the Browns. I'm not there. I think we're going to beat the Titans for some reason.
I think
know.
week 16 and 17 with Houston and then Baltimore, I think Houston's going to be out on the season. So I think that's a winnable game at the very least. And then Baltimore's probably playing their JV team come week 17. So it could just be an easy steal win.
Look, if they finish with like 6 or 7 wins somehow, that would be incredible. I mean, it would so spin everything the other way. Where we are right now, we're like, shoot, is Zach Taylor going to get fired if things don't get better? It's like all these questions, and then they finish with 6 or 7 wins. I mean, people would this city would be on fire.
The comparison I used yesterday with Luke was they are going to be that sneaky New York Jets team of last year that finished with 7 wins and happened to lose to the worst team in football, be the first team to give us our first win, but still snuck in somehow with 7 wins and then had expectations going into this year. Now, we see how the Jets panned out, and I hope that that's not the case for the Bengals, but I feel like if we can get to 6 or 7 wins, quietly, we're going to be that team that insiders, are going to talk about like, hey, they could potentially make some noise going into year 2 with Joe Burrow. Or we could go the complete opposite way and win 3 or 4 games and then have the coaching discussion. But that's, it remains to be seen.
It's going to be interesting.
Oh, yeah.
I think hope should be our default in life, but I've covered this team for 7 years or so, and I just hate seeing when people say, I feel like these good things could happen, and they don't. And I hate seeing how,
They never do. They never do. They never do.
Bengals fans, God love you. I don't know how you do it. I mean, you guys are some of your skin is like 2 inches thick, every Bengals fan. I mean, you're just like jacked with skin. I don't know how you guys do it. I honestly respect the heck out of you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, one final question. This is the biggest one of the day. Make sure that you take your time, but Skyline or Gold Star?
Oh, gosh. Take your time, Jeremy.
I don't need any time. Skyline.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, there we go. All
right. You can come back.
I'm not a Cincinnati. You guys already talked about at the start of this. I am from Central Ohio near Columbus. And so we didn't really have, I mean, it's up there, but I don't remember like seeing Gold Star and Skyline very often. I know that it's up there somewhere. But I came through Cincinnati when I was 11 or 12. We stopped. It was some kind of trip we were on as a family, I think. And we went to Skyline, and I loved it. I think I was the only one in my family. And people will say, if you're not a native Cincinnatian, you're going to like go order like a bowl of chili there and get completely confused and have no idea what you're doing. And I just love the flavor. I think it's perfect. I think it's great. One of the things
you ate 10 of them. You ate 10 of them.
That was one of the worst decisions of my life. And people thought that I was saying that I didn't like Skyline. I'm like, listen, no. It's that the cheese wall. I tell everyone about the cheese wall. I mean, greater than the Great Wall of China in my chest I couldn't get, it's like once they were in there, they didn't move correctly down. And so I started trying the Joey Chestnut, like water trick. That wasn't all put on film. But I tried to drink water and I couldn't get it to move. And so I got to like 7 or 8 and I was like, I'm going to die. I had the meat sweats. I didn't know those were real. I was sweating. I was like shaking, like grabbing the next dog. But anyhow, I love Skyline. Here's what I love. And here's why I crave Skyline almost more than like any food ever is because I think about the hot dog, the naked hot dog just sitting there in the bun. This is going to get weird. I got to stop. I think about the hot dog. And then
this podcast is where we tackle the most important and most difficult issues right here.
And it starts with the naked hot dog, baby.
You have the naked hot dog, and it's just waiting. It's ready. And then you clothe it.
It's had its heart broken a little bit, maybe once or twice.
You clothe it in hot chili. And then like it's just, and then the chili's on there, and the chili's like it's about to get really interesting up in here. And the cold cheese, and it just sits on top of the hot chili, and it just starts to get that little like darkish kind of orangey look where it's starting to melt a little bit. That to me is Cincinnati Skyline chili and why I love it so much. When you put all those flavors together, just a little bit of the cold cheese with the melty edges, and the naked dog underneath.
Oh,
it's perfection. Jeremy Rauch, thank you so much.
Well, yes.
You got something, Sam?
No, I was going to say, so Jeremy, you and Joe have both been on this podcast. What is some 2 cents you give us going forward? And is there any, like, how do we go get more guests, or is it just kind of like who you know, essentially?
Well, it's a little bit of who you know. And I know you guys had mentioned to me about talking with Anthony Munoz, who is.
We went to his camp. I think he'd really remember us. We stuck out.
He is a fantastic human being. He should remember you guys.
Yeah.
Fantastic human being. And I would like to think that he might give you guys a shot to do it. The one advice I would give you.
Really quick, was this the book that he was talking about, the Trusting God book? Was this the one that you guys were talking about? Okay, great book, by the way. Great book recommendation.
100%. I haven't read it myself, but.
It's a good book.
I will say this, though, like, this is an endorsement for you guys. You guys, because of your personalities, you can't change them. John, you are who you are. Sam, you are who you are. Make this podcast unique. A podcast that just comes in and is basically like, what do you think the Bengals are going to do this week? Are they going to win? Are they going to lose? Blah, blah, blah. You guys are making this unique with your unique questions, with your personalities, with a bit of your off-the-wallness. Sam, mostly that.
Yeah, I know.
With dogs. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
What is it?
What'd you call your dog?
Sweetie.
Oh, Sweetie. Oh, Sweetie.
Just let it go.
With dog barking in the background. I mean, like, no, I think what you guys do is fun. It's different. It's unique. I think you should keep it just like this.
Okay.
I don't think you need to change it, but I think you're going to continue to just get numbers. You're going to build rapport, and as you do, you'll hopefully get some more people on. And I think just kind of like keep shooting your shot with like local journalists.
I've been trying Nick Lachey nonstop. I'm gonna Andy Dufresne him and Shawshank Redemption.
Dude, just keep trying. And if you put it out there, and if I like it, retweet it, like hopefully someone like, who are these guys? I think you guys would really enjoy Paul Daner. You would enjoy.
Oh God, I know, but I just feel like that was one guy that I was like, I don't know if he'd think we were just maybe too stupid.
I will throw it out to him because I think that you would enjoy. He's got really good insight.
I used to listen to him and Jim Osarski all the time.
By the way, your lap impression was.
You like that?
Was so.
Oh, well, I mean, gosh, you put all the guys together, Dan. That's where the rubber meets the road. It's just, you got to get in there. I mean, when I was with Greg Cook and he'd come up to the line and he'd say, now's the time to just beat everybody's heads in. That's what we did. That's what we did, Dan.
Someone did, maybe it was the guest you had on. Someone did the yell. We're like, go!
Oh, that was me.
Go, Dio! Go! You want? Someone's watching these clips. Someone's watching. Go! Oh!
John, that was so perfect because Dan will be in the middle of this like perfect, like great call, man, just smooth, like. There goes Joe Mixon. Go! And he's just like hopped all over it, man.
Yeah! Get a block! Yeah! There you go.
And then like the big thing is like I can tell when he's smacking his hands because his hands are ginormous. I've met him a handful of times just that, off the cusp and being in school. And I've shooken his hand and every time I feel like I've broken every bone in my body. So every time you can hear it in the microphone, just when it smacks, it's, that's lap. So
incredible.
Hey,
anyways, sorry.
Again, thank you so much. This was a pleasure. Can't wait to
Jeremy, sincerely, thank you.
Yeah.
And I want to also just really quick, I came on my thought. This relationship started the Steelers game 2018. We saw you on the sideline, and I said, "Hey, did you get your caribou?" And you're like, "Your caribou?" And John, you were there because we were watching the warm-ups, and that's where it started. 2018. I wanted to get the timeline correct. 2018. That's when this started. I'm so blessed and appreciative to know you because not only have you been an awesome journalist and an amazing member of the media, but even more of a man of faith. And I genuinely look forward to following you in the future and appreciate any time that you can make for us. And keep doing your thing, man. We appreciate it.
Caribou Coffee, the GOAT. You guys are incredible. Let's do it again sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
Go, Gio! All right. See you later, man. Bye.
Hey, I'm pausing recording real quick. I got to pee really bad. And then we'll finish up.
Okay.
Cool.
Better for us today. That pep talk could not, like the one that you called me this morning and said, "Hey, I think we should do A, B, and C." I honestly was going into this thing. I'm like, especially after the bat, I'm like, I kind of know how to talk to him. I don't really, but I'm like, I don't know. I was looking at 20 minutes. I'm like, shoot, I just feel like this is going nowhere. Please, someone come with a question. Honestly, that was subtly my favorite one so far.
It was good, wasn't it?